Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of the Village of Cary and the Board of Zoning, Planning and Appeals, I'd like to hereby call this meeting to order on Thursday, March the 14th, 2019 at approximately 7:30 p.m. We have a quorum of members, and I'd like to ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Brian Simmons, to please call the roll.
Sure. Williams?
Present.
Pippin? Graziano?
Here.
O'Laughlin?
Here.
Kretschmer?
Here.
Jasper? Corey?
Here. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, or gentlemen, I invite you to rise with us for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, everyone. So, folks, before we begin tonight, I was talking to Mr. Simmons earlier today. I just want to make the petitioners aware that, welcome, Mr. Jasper. Good evening. I just want to make the petitioners aware that while we now have a bigger complement of ZPA members, we don't have a full complement. And the reason why I'm bringing that to your attention, there's normally 7 of us, and now there's 6. That's actually very good. And for your petitions, it requires 4 positive votes to move forward to recommend to the Village of Cary. So I just want to make sure that both petitioners are comfortable with that reality. Pat, thank you for joining.
Yep.
And I just want to make sure the petitioners are okay with that reality. We're missing a member. Okay? Very good. All right, so let me just, I know one of you have been here before and probably have seen this process, but for those of you that may have not, the way the process works is we ask Mr. Simmons to give us an overview of the application, and then we as the ZPA members may have some questions for Mr. Simmons. From there, we turn it back over to yourselves for further comment about the petition. The ZPA members may have questions for yourself, and then upon conclusion, we close that portion of the meeting. There's only the 3 of you assembled here. We'll open it up for public comment. That's part of the process. It's required by law. Then we close that portion. The ZPA members may have some questions amongst themselves. We take a vote, and then we deliver that vote back to the elected officials, and they become the final arbiter of tonight's discussion. So that's our process, okay? So before I proceed on an administrative matter, do you have any questions about the process? Okay, very good. So, gentlemen, in your packages, I think you've all received via law enforcement, the meeting minutes in the package. There's 5 meeting minutes, and I'm just going to state them for the record. You have from ZPA case 07003, that's the cell tower temporary moratorium. You also have the case 11001, that's for the map amendment conditional use for the car wash, and there's 2 sets of meeting minutes. You'll recall that we had an extension for the request of the petitioner. Then we have the conditional use for 346 Foxford Drive, which is case 12001. And then finally, 835 Feinberg Court, 12002. So you have those meeting minutes in front of you. And before I ask for a verbal agreement on the meeting minutes, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. On a voice vote, for the 5 meeting minutes that I just articulated, those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to call village case number 19ZPA02001. This is for petitioner Mr. Dave Dolby. It's a conditional use for a multifamily dwelling. The zoning district is 17.20.030. The location is 40 Crystal Street. And at this time, we'll turn it over to Mr. Simmons for further comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The request this evening, as mentioned, is a request for the property at 40 Crystal Street to convert a portion of the building to residential or multifamily. Excuse me. The subject property is located along Crystal Street or Northwest Highway in downtown Cary, Zone B1, which is our central business zoning district. The proposal this evening for review is petitioner seeking to convert about 800 square feet of the first floor to a residential apartment. Approximately 550 square feet would continue to remain in office or commercial use. The building also does have a basement below the entire level of first floor, which would be accessible to a future tenant, and also would include an indoor parking space through access through a garage and the garage door in the rear of the facility. This slide here shows the delineation of what portion of the first floor would remain for commercial versus the residential unit. As you can see, there would be a one-bedroom apartment with living room and kitchen area. That would be in the rear of the building. The front portion of the building would still remain for commercial office use. Specifically, existing conditions include a reception area, conference room, an office area. That would be the portion of the building that faces Route 14. So it would maintain a commercial street presence while the residential unit would be located in the rear of the building. And the right-hand side portion of the slide, you can see the basement level, which would include various water utilities for the building, and then also the garage in the back portion would be accessible for the tenant. There's a one-car garage door that would provide access to that level. The B1 district in general is designed to accommodate the needs of existing central business district, primarily to provide for a broad range of office and retail uses. It also does include, as highlighted in our zoning code here, some incentives for multifamily residential. The district makes allowances for residential development primarily above the ground floor. As you can see in the slide, which is also included in the staff report, the limits of the B1 district are highlighted by the red line on the map. And all of the properties that include residential within their facilities are highlighted by the stars on this exhibit. If it's a red star, that means that there's a residential unit that is on the first floor of that building without commercial access in those areas. The yellow stars indicate locations where residential is only included on the second story of a commercial building. As you can see by the exhibit, most of the first floor residential units are confined to an area in the southwest corner of the B1 district. Most of those were previously single-family homes that have been or either still continue to be operated as single-family homes or are different buildings that have been converted to apartments that are solely used for apartment living. The yellow buildings, which again are centrally located along Main Street and also along Crystal Street, are buildings which have existing commercial spaces on the first level. Generally are two-story buildings that have had some apartments or rental units added to their second stories previously. The subject property, which is located near the intersection of Main Street and Route 14, Crystal Street, you can see is designated by the blue star. It is a one-story building, so it doesn't exactly conform to the other patterns of development that are in the area from two-story commercial spaces. According to the village's comprehensive plan, the downtown area is designated as a mixed-use area, which is typically includes both commercial uses primarily on the ground floors, but also office and residential uses on the upper floors. Although residential in this case is proposed for the first floor, the tenant or the petitioner is proposing to maintain that commercial presence along Crystal Street by maintaining that office area. There is, through discussions with the petitioner, there is the ability potentially for the tenant of the apartment unit to have access to that commercial space if that's a potential design from that perspective, but the intent would be to maintain that area as a commercial use as opposed to a residential only use, so that the commercial presence of the building would be maintained. Also with the grades that are in the area, the back portion of the building where the residential unit would be located at is essentially a second floor as the grades significantly drop as you go from the front of the building towards the back. As with any zoning petition, there are various standards that are within the municipal code that must be met by the petitioner in order to support a conditional use, which are highlighted in the slide. In general, the use will not substantially diminish or impair the values of property within the immediate vicinity, will not impede the normal orderly development of surrounding property, not contribute to an overburdening of municipal services, and generally consistent with the policies and future land use maps in the village's comprehensive plan. As mentioned, staff and the petitioner provided a response to the standards in their application. Staff believes that the conditional use standards in this case are satisfied from a standpoint that it will comply with the general regulations of the comprehensive plan by maintaining both the commercial and the residential nature of the property. Will maintain a portion of that first story for commercial purposes, but it will be similar to other developments in the area that have a mixed use of residential and commercial presently. Should the zoning board concur with staff's recommendation and the petitioner's request, they should recommend this evening approval of a conditional use for a multifamily dwelling, specifically one residential unit for the property located at 40 Crystal Street, subject to the 3 conditions that are listed in your staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding my presentation, or petitioner will have additional information to provide as well.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Your diagram is particularly helpful, so thank you. Sure. Appreciate it. Gentlemen, questions for Mr. Simmons?
Yeah, I got one. Why multifamily if there's only one unit?
That's the definition.
Sure. Yeah, our code doesn't speak towards single family. It's the only definition for residential uses we have in the B1 district is multifamily. Even if it is one unit, it's the closest we have.
Anyone else? Okay, for our petitioner, would you like to add some additional comments? And I forgot to mention, gentlemen, this does get filmed. It's on YouTube. So those that can't attend can see it, and also the elected officials. So when you address the podium, which if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record, that'll be appreciated. Thank you very much.
My name is Chris Russo with ALA Architects, 2600 Behan Road, Crystal Lake. Thank you, Brian. That was very good. I mean, he said everything I wanted to say. Usually I don't get that, so thank you. The only thing I wanted to add was that we really care about aesthetics. I know that's something we didn't talk about, but we love Cary. We love that street. We want to maintain the building. I just had a picture of some of the work that we've done on it. You know,
Yeah, it looks really
so it's just something that's important to us. So this is a good way that's going to make this building successful for us, is to be able to have this rental space in the back. And as of right now, we're using this as a second office for us. This used to be our home. We moved to Crystal Lake to a bigger place. But now we see that there's a demand that it's nice to maybe have a secondary office for people to take the train and things like that. So we care about the building. We like the area, and just wanted to thank you for considering our request.
So, gentlemen, questions for Mr. Rizzo?
I have just a general question of the residential area. What you think about, I know it doesn't have anything to do with the zoning here really, but the living room, opening that up to the kitchen, keeping that wall in there, I don't know if for rental would be a little bit better.
It might be a little bit.
We could do that right now. There's actually was the wall there. I think we were just trying
Just
to work
gonna use
as
what's
much
there.
with
Right.
what was there as much as possible.
And do you really want to keep that possible access between the residential and the commercial? Or using it as a secondary egress there?
That one, I believe, I'm not sure if the person who takes that would eventually want the space in the front. My understanding right now is that would be closed off and it would just be our office there.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure if that would stay, but I believe it's going away.
Okay. Just curious.
Gentlemen, any other questions for Mr. Rizzo?
My assumption is you had no comments from the neighbors whatsoever that you threw email or through mails to.
No, we had one came back, but I haven't heard anything from the letters.
Okay. And then I guess, I don't know if it's for you or it'd be for Mr. Simmons. The only thing that ever concerns me in this little area is fire trucks getting in and out. And I mean, these buildings are so tight together. Is this a concern for us, or, I mean, if they had to go to the back of the building now, they're going to have to sit on 14 or run a long hose, but.
Correct. It's the nature of development that's in this area. If there were to be an emergency in this vicinity, fire would respond to the front of the building and then would run their hoses or whatever access they would need to the back.
Because I know that road in between, it's a car. It's not an ambulance, it's not a fire truck, it's a car.
For any one of these buildings, I don't even believe there's any hydrants that are in the back of the sites.
No.
In that area, they would only access them through the 14, so they would block off likely 14 to any traffic while they're battling an issue
Okay,
of this.
all right.
Mr. O'Loughlin, anything else?
Nope, that's it for me.
Gentlemen, any other questions?
I got one. If I'm working in that office and I have a need for a natural use, where do I go?
Yeah, so the plan now, it's a preliminary plan we did discuss with the petitioner in the office that from a restroom facility, if the two uses are separated, they would need to provide some sort of restroom facility.
Oh,
So that's not a condition of the zoning approval that we put in there, but that would be a condition of a building permit to provide that facility. It would be a requirement actually to have a certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
good catch, Jim.
Mr.
Well,
Rizzo,
when I first looked at this plan, I said, oh, okay, well, they're setting it up for somebody to live there and work in the front, and if they go back and forth to the restroom, no big deal. You know, but if there's definitely separate uses, or could be separate uses,
Yeah, the drawings on the office right now, we're showing an accessible bathroom that'll be put in the front
Okay.
half.
So, Mr. Rizzo, I'm going to continue on Mr. Graziano's theme, is that with regard to the diagram that Mr. Simmons presented, you can see that, there are some examples of residential in that area. They're on the second floor. So what I'm really trying to understand is that what is your motivation for having this particular spot combined with your commercial business? What's the motivation here?
Honestly, I know the owner has tried to have, this space was very difficult to rent. So it was very hard to get somebody in. We've had a few tenants over the years. We've been out of this location for quite some time, but it was always an advertisement in the window of available for rent or lease.
Yes.
And I think that it was just trying to figure out what can we do that we think that there's a need for. And it seems that there is a need for an apartment. You're close to the train station. There's a park behind. It's got a garage that gives us kind of advantage over some other places don't have. And that the people that would be looking for an office space, I think would be in the same boat as what we are. You're looking for a reception area, a conference room, a small office. So we just couldn't find anybody that would take the whole spot. So this seemed to be the best way to use that building.
All right, thank you. So gentlemen, any other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rizzo. So this is the time where we do open it up for public comment. And gentlemen, I don't know if you have any questions for this petitioner. All right, we will close the public comment. Gentlemen, before I call for a vote, do you have any additional questions about this petition or this application? Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of the conditional use for a multifamily dwelling as defined as one residential unit for the property located at 40 Crystal Street, subject to the following conditions. 1, the conditional use shall be granted to Dave Dolby for the property located at 40 Crystal Street. 2, the residential unit shall be located in the rear of the building. The front of the building, which faces Crystal Street, shall remain as a commercial use and utilized for office/retail purposes appropriate for the zoning district. And 3, the proposed improvement shall substantially conform to the attached plans and exhibits as part of this petition, except as they may be changed to conform to village codes in all conditions of approval.
So moved.
second.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Any additional comments or questions on the,
I guess the only thing that bothers me, are we okay with just one point of access to each area?
Yeah, it's a building code requirement. So from a egress standpoint, there's, depending on the size of the space, there's requirements for ingress and egress. So points of egress could be window openings as well from emergency purposes, as long as the window is of a certain size. There is an existing, so for the residential unit, there's a door that's existing off the kitchen area. I believe that's
Yeah,
remaining.
I see
And then there's
that.
a second then access point to the basement level.
I was going to say, there's a stairway down to the basement garage.
Okay, well.
Yeah, then
what-
the office area, you would have the front door obviously access, and then there's a window that is off the conference room that, from an egress standpoint, they could have that as a
Okay.
size requirement.
So a window would count as
Yeah, that,
possible
I can,
egress?
yeah, that would be something we would review, obviously, for the building permit, but we would, that's an area we can specifically address to make sure it complies with code.
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Graziano. Other questions, gentlemen? All right, Mr. Simmons, would you call the roll?
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Graziano,
Yes.
Kretschmer,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Jasper,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes. So you have a positive recommendation, Mr. Rizzo, and I think you probably know the process, but if you don't, just stay in touch with Mr. Simmons. He'll tell you the date that your next meeting is with the village.
April 2nd.
Yeah. And just so you're aware, because you did get a positive recommendation like this, and Mr. Simmons will correct me now, it goes on something called the consent agenda. So typically, it gets automatically approved, but I don't want to speak out of school, but that's my understanding of the process.
Unless a board member pulls it off, it could be approved with no discussion with other items that are on the consent agenda. I still recommend that you be there just in case it gets pulled to answer questions. But generally, those items are approved without discussion.
You're welcome. Continued success. Yeah. All right, at this time, we will now call village case number ZPA 02002. This is for Athletico Management LLC. The owner is FNM Alliance. And the request is amendment for conditional use for occupational therapy office, section 117.20.030 in the code. And the location is the Cary Square Shopping Center, 732 Northwest Highway. And over to you, Mr. Simmons, for further review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, this request is for the existing Athletico tenant, which is in the Cary Square Shopping Center at this location. Back in 2012, I believe it was, they received conditional use approval to construct the physical occupational therapy office within this building. As proposed, they are seeking to expand the footprint of that tenant space. As you can see in the slide, the darker red area is approximately the existing footprint for the office area, and the lighter red or pinkish area is the proposed expansion. They're seeking to add about 1,850 square feet to the space with no exterior improvements proposed. It would all be interior to the shopping center. Under our current zoning regulations, this use requires conditional use approval, which with the expansion, they're intensifying that use, which therefore requires the amendment to the conditional use based off the approvals that were granted back in 2012. This slide shows both the existing layout of both the current tenant space and the space that they're expanding into in the demolition plan. It currently has various offices that are established within it. In the proposed floor plan that's on the right-hand side of this image, they're proposing to essentially gut that area and have more of an open area for treating clients or customers of their facility. As previously mentioned, our zoning code includes various standards for conditional uses that must be reviewed and substantiated by the petitioner. Generally, the use will not diminish or impair values of property within the immediate vicinity, not impede the normal orderly development of surrounding property, not contribute to overburdening of municipal services, and is consistent with policies and future land use maps in the village's comprehensive plan. As the petitioner did provide a response to those standards as part of their zoning petition, staff has reviewed that petition based off these standards and does believe that it does comply. Obviously, they're an existing use within the shopping center and have worked compatibly with other uses in the center for the last 7 years. The proposed expansion would just increase their footprint in the center, but would continue to be compatible with other land or zoning uses within that district. So therefore, if staff recommends with or concurs with, CPA concurs with staff's recommendation, they should recommend to the village board approval of conditional use amendment for physical occupational therapy office for an 1,850 square foot expansion to the Athletico located at 732 Northwest Highway, subject to the 2 conditions listed in your staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't have any.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Nope. So I was asking Mr. Simmons earlier, I think is there a tenant in that space that they're going to acquire?
Yes, I believe there is property owners here. You can give more information as far as that too, but they would be expanding into an adjacent office space.
Very good. So gentlemen, unless there's questions from yourselves, we'll ask the petitioner to present further information at this time. And gentlemen, just recall that for the record, please state your name and address.
Farhan Hanif, I am from 760 Wilson Lane, Hinsdale. I represent FM Alliance, which is a landlord.
And I am Jason Myers. I'm the facility manager at the Athletico in Cary.
Thank you. So did you want to offer any additional comments, Jason?
First of all, I wanted to thank you guys all for your consideration and Mr. Simmons for a summary. We feel very fortunate, and I opened the facility. Our 6-year anniversary is March 18th, so big day for us. But we've been very fortunate to grow as a business and even larger than our original idea for the city of Cary. So we're looking to expand, get that extra 1,850 square feet, just to expand and make it more comfortable for our clients.
Understand.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, before we move on, just want to make sure that I'm asking if there's any questions of the petitioner. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's obvious it's just an office space right now, right? Just,
Yeah.
1, 2, 6, 8 operating that. And there, how many people are there? There's one tenant in there now, currently?
There is a tenant in that space. They will be moving to the space which is adjacent to it. And this used to be a medical use previously anyways. There used to be an internal medicine physician who used to be here, and then they left. Then in the downturn, they left, and then we have another tenant there, but they have agreed to move to space which is adjacent to it. And even the space that they're moving to was also medical use. It was a dentist. So there has been, the history of the building is very strongly, multiple medical dentists have been in this space.
It's good to see things going on there because everything was starting to close up. But
Yes, yes.
And isn't there a new thing that just opened, like, few stores fronts down? What was, a cafe? Is that where the cafe went?
Yes, there's
open
the
yet?
Lucky Pennies is going in. They are wrapping up their build out now. They're looking to, last I chatted with them, try to open this month. They have not opened to the public as of yet. And then 2 years ago, Kojak's.
we got code
Center,
center,
right.
which is, I'm in that mall quite regularly. Let me just say that. Live right there, and I'm always down the street eating.
Are you anticipating any more, not business, more for Jason, but obviously you need the space, else you wouldn't be doing it. Is the senior living, is that under consideration, or is that
Not so much. I think it's just more for the space, and we've just found that it gets tight, especially after school times with the kids. It's a higher level patient, and then they involve more running, cutting. So we just look for overall more space and just safe for everybody.
Gentlemen, any other questions? All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. All right, before I call the motion, I just want to double check with all of you that if we've answered or assuaged any comments or concerns, questions.
Nope.
We're good? Okay, at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of an amendment to an existing conditional use for a physical occupational therapy office for an 1,850 square foot expansion to Athletico located at 732 Northwest Highway, subject to the following conditions. 1, the conditional use amendment shall be granted to Athletico Management LLC for the property located at 732 Northwest Highway. And 2, the proposed improvement shall substantially conform to the attached plans and exhibits as part of this petition, except as they may be changed to conform to village codes and all other conditions of approval.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Unless there's any other comments or questions, Mr. Simmons, would you call the roll?
Sure. Kretschmer,
Yes.
Jasper,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Graziano,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes. So you have a positive recommendation, and I think the process is very similar now, that we would probably recommend to stay in touch with Mr. Simmons. Even though you've got 6 votes in the affirmative, goes on the consent agenda, and in the event that someone has a question like we did, It's probably in your best interest to be at the meeting where this is going to be formally approved, but I'll leave that to Mr. Simmons to discuss with you as you move forward. We'll wish you continued success. And Jason, congratulations on your pending arrival. I'm very happy to hear about that. That's really good news. Yeah, good stuff. All right.
It'll be scheduled for April 2nd as well, so.
Thank you,
That
gentlemen.
means at 6 o'clock, sorry, in the same room.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good luck. Yeah, all right. So gentlemen, before we adjourn, I think the next thing that I do know we have coming up is we have to go over the UDO again, and I think that's for the 11th.
Correct. We have 2 upcoming meetings that we'll have agenda for. There will not be another agenda this month, so you're off in 28th. There will not be a meeting, but we will meet again to discuss the UDO on April 11th. I'm waiting for the revisions back from our consultant, which I'll hopefully get tomorrow. I'll review those, and then I'll forward those out as part of the package, or possibly earlier, put them on our website for at least 2 weeks for the public to view. And then the April 25th, we will have, right now, there are 3 cases that are lined up for that date. I didn't line those up the same night that we were discussing the UDO, so we'll have 3 other cases that have been submitted for items that 2 of them would be not required through once the UDO gets approved, but they're submitting to go through the process now, just to make sure they have those approvals, similar to what Atletico was doing this evening. And then other cases, the formal application is not coming in, but I'm anticipating we'll have another case for that evening as well.
So 2 questions around this. One is that, just for the benefit of the group, is that, we've been bouncing around on times. My recollection for the meeting on the 11th, we agreed to 6:30 PM.
Correct.
Yeah, and the meeting on the 25th would,
Go back to 7:30.
very good. And then, assuming we can get through the entire, because I think there's still about a dozen motions to call against the UDO for the 11th, assuming we get through all of those, and assuming that goes to the village board right after that.
Yeah, from a timing standpoint, what we've looked at from a village board meeting schedule, obviously there has to be a recommendation from this board before it goes to the village board. If there is a recommendation from the zoning board on those matters to get reviewed by the village board on the 11th, we would schedule that for review for the village board on May 21st.
Okay,
So it'd be another, within 45 days of that hearing would be up for formal consideration,
very good.
assuming this board makes a recommendation on the UDO on the 11th.
Very good.
If we make the almost unanimous, so if we do the
It would,
majority, would that be a line item, or is this one like not a line item for them to vote?
just due to the topic at hand, for generally these cases where if it's a unanimous recommendation, our policy has been to put them on the consent agenda. But for the UDO, it would be an item for separate action.
It'd be a line by line.
Yeah, I didn't think that, yeah.
Yeah, and I would anticipate there will be still residents that would attend the village board to discuss it as well. So I'm assuming the board members would have, questions on them as well.
Just like we can't make it one case with several.
Right,
Yeah.
true.
They can't either.
Yeah, and there's, obviously through the process, there's potential that the village board, even though they've reviewed it at various workshops as well, there's potential if residents show up, at any of these meetings, that they can say, refer it back to this committee for additional review if there's an area of the code that they want to tweak further. Or they could adopt the entire code, take a section out and send that back for review. So it's not a set and done deal that, if this zoning board makes a recommendation that the village board is going to approve it as presented, there could be some additional changes or requests to make changes.
They could approve parts of it, but send like one section back to us.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, I think
All right.
sign code, give an example, they could say, we want to have some additional revisions to that before that formally gets adopted, and send that back.
Got it.
So that potentially could have new board members sitting by that time.
Correct, and that's just due to the timing we were looking at from, how the UDO has gone through the process with it being reviewed on April 11th. If there's a recommendation from this board, the earliest it could be on the board agenda would be the first meeting in May, which is potentially when you could have new trustees being seated, and we didn't want to have that be the first meeting for them, as if
No, you want to give them some time to review.
Correct.
Obviously, yeah.
Right. So that's where it would be scheduled for later May, if there's a recommendation from this board for them to consider.
Right. Makes sense, makes sense.
And I'll ask this question once more, Mr. Simmons, publicly. Do you know if any other consideration has been given to the eighth member of this committee?
Not publicly at the board level. Yeah, it's not something that's been discussed outside of the time that it was voted on previously.
Okay, thank you.
So it's not contained in the revised UDO.
Correct. Not in the UDO.
At this time.
Well, you know, we sent it back for revisions, I can kind
If that's the game.
I think as it relates to what we know from other communities do that. They have an eighth person in the event that you can't have a quorum. And we almost found ourselves in that situation not very long ago again.
Yes.
So that's why I'm sensitive to it, because if you're the petitioner sitting out there and then you find out we can't convene the meeting, sometimes it can be another month.
Yeah.
So, anyway. All right, so I think most people know how we feel about this. I still strongly recommend it, and we'll see where it takes us. Okay, so gentlemen, before we conclude, do you have any other comments or questions that you wanted to address? The chair will entertain a motion
So
to
moved.
convene.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.